Hi there, welcome back to the Messy Cook. It's a weeknight and I'm doing an easy weeknight meal that you can put together in about half an hour, maybe a little bit more depending on what your sides are going to be. What I'm making today is creamy mushroom pork chops. This is kind of a homemade play and much healthier play on, a lot of people do pork chops with canned mushroom soup, so this is kind of my version of it. So what I've got here is two pork chops. They're not butt chops, but I think they're shoulder chops for pork, and that's what I enjoy. You could also do this with chicken if you're not a pork eater. And what I'm doing is seasoning both sides here with salt and pepper. I've already done the pepper on here. Now I go a tiny bit heavier with the pepper because I find pepper and pork actually go together really, really nice, and it doesn't come off as super like spicy or too peppery when you're cooking this. So I'm just going to finish sprinkling this on here. You don't want to over season, but when I make this I season it in layers, as the recipe is kind of done in layers. And what I mean by that is you get the meat going, and then we're going to remove the pork chops, let them sit. They won't be fully cooked yet, and then we're going to work on the mushroom sauce. So I've got those done, and what I have here, I'm going to move this aside. What else I have to go on here? We're going to use a little more salt and pepper afterwards. I also have some garlic. I've got about 3 heads of garlic, not massive, but good size. I like a lot of garlic. If that's too much for you, or you don't like garlic, you don't have to add it. I'm going to add some onion powder. I don't want to add actual onions, although I suppose you could, but I don't want the texture of the onions in there because it takes a long time to cook them down until they're soft. And I want a nice soft sauce. This is about 8 ounces of just button mushrooms. I'm using creminis. Use whatever mushroom you want. You can use lion's mane, portobellos, regular white button mushrooms, whatever you want, or you can use a variety, which is really nice too. To finish with that, we're going to also use some broth. I have beef broth, which is closest to, I just happen to have a jar of it open, some broth I made in the summertime, so I'm going to use some of that, and I'm going to use some heavy whipping cream. So I'm going to turn the burner on at the stove, and we're going to get moved over, and I'll show you the next steps. Okay, so you want to use any type of pan that is oven safe. And if not, and you don't want to do it in your oven, or you don't have an oven safe pan, you can absolutely finish this on the stove as well. It's not something that has to go in the oven. So I'm going to add, and this is just some bacon fat. This is going to just grease the pan for us. I'm going to push that off. This will grease the pan up for the pork chop. So you just want to put that in, and we're going to get this hot, let that fat melt, and then we're going to add the pork chops in. So I'm just going to kind of push this around here. I have my burner on medium-high heat. This is my power burner, so it's not right high on a regular stove, but it's pretty high heat. What I want to do is get this pan heated up really, really well till it's kind of sizzling. You don't have to add the fat right away, but I like to, just to get it moved around. You can also heat your pan. If you have stainless steel, I would heat your pan first. Do the water test where you sprinkle a little bit of water in. If you see the bubbles dancing around and a little bubble dancing around the pan, you know it's hot enough. Because basically what you're looking for is to make it non-stick. You can do this in a non-stick if that's what you prefer as well. Most non-sticks are not safe in the oven, so that's when you're going to do the stove method, or just the burner method. And I'll show you. It's actually pretty simple. Ooh, got a little fluff in there. All right, so this is getting there. You can see, I don't know if you can see here or not, it's getting kind of, you put oil in a pan and you can see that it almost makes it like a little bit of a design there. That's what we're gonna want. This is my beef stock here that I'm going to use, but I'll show you when that goes in. I also have the oven right now on 375. I'm baking my husband a potato for his. I'm gonna do some spinach on the side, and I'll show you in there how I do that as well, so you can see. So this is definitely hot enough. I'm going to take these pork chops that I've seasoned, salt and pepper. Like I said, if you don't want the pepper, don't worry about it. And we're just going to get these into the pan. There we go. And we want to get these browned nicely on both sides. So I'm going to let them sit for a few minutes, and make sure when I want to flip them, I'm going to make sure that they release from the pan. So that'll be like your non-stick feel. I don't want it sticking to the pan. So I'm going to let these sizzle for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'm going to get them flipped. We'll come back at that point so you can see the kind of brown texture we're looking for. Okay, so I think I'm ready to flip these over. These are probably a quarter of the way cooked through. These aren't super thick chops, so you can see. So you got a really lovely brown color there. This is a bit of the blood from the bottom. I actually don't like that, so I'm going to take that out. If you like it for flavor, keep it. If not, you don't have to. Let me get this flipped over. Get that other bit out of there. There we go. That's what's going in the garden. So we've got this nice and brown, and we're going to brown this other side for about 2 minutes. And there's enough fat that's come off of here that these won't stick. So I'll brown those and I'll show you the next steps. Okay, so these have browned for another couple of minutes, and I'm going to take them out of the pan. You see they're not super brown on this side, but that's okay. We just want a little bit, and we're going to have all this brown bits in the bottom of the pan. Don't worry about that. That's actually something we want. So we're just going to set those chops aside here, just to rest for a few minutes. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get the mushrooms sauteed up with the garlic. I'm going to add about maybe a tablespoon of oil. I'm just using olive oil. You can use whatever oil you want. Use something neutral. My recommendations, or you could use more, you could use tallow or lard. You could use more bacon fat if you like, butter, oil, avocado, olive oil. I don't use regular vegetable oil, canola oil. They're not very good seed oils for you, so I don't like to use those. So I like to use like actual animal fats, or like I said, olive oil or avocado oil. So I'm going to add these mushrooms in, and what we want to do is when we get these mushrooms all browned up, and what they're going to do is release some moisture, and it's going to pick up some of the color from the bottom of the pan and also help release some of those little bits. So that's going to be delicious. Now I don't want to add the garlic in yet, because if I do, it's going to burn, and burnt garlic is no good for anybody. Flavor is absolutely awful. Now I have turned this down to about a medium heat, because this is a cast pan, enameled cast pan, and it does get very hot very quickly. So we're just going to let these sit for a few minutes to get them a little bit brown, and then we'll come back and toss them around, and I'll show you what point we get that garlic in. See, some of these are getting a little bit of color on them. That's what we're looking for. Also, like I said, don't crowd the pan with mushrooms. If you do too many, they're not going to get enough color. It's going to get too moist, and they won't color very nicely. So this will take, I'll probably saute these for about 3 minutes just to get enough color on them that's going to pick up, like I said, as it releases the water, it's going to pick up some of those bits on the bottom of the pan, and that's going to give us some really amazing flavor. You know, if you wanted just to do pork chops with mushroom soup, and you want to add some extra mushrooms in, you could do the same thing here. And instead of adding the cream and that in, when I get to that, you could just take a can of condensed mushroom soup and just throw that in as well, and just season as you like. Now normally with mushrooms, I use fresh thyme a lot. Now the garden season is over and I don't have any fresh thyme. Also, it doesn't look very nice in the sauce because it is kind of a creamy sauce when we're all done. But if you want to add that in for flavor, you would add it in around this point. Now these are getting a bit of color on them, so I'm going to add in the garlic. There, like I said, I add a lot of garlic. I love garlic, so we're just going to throw that all in there. We're going to get that sauteed a little bit. Again, watch your heat. You don't want this garlic to burn. There we go. So we're just going to stir that in for a couple of minutes. I'm going to sprinkle this with that onion powder, just kind of get it on the mushrooms. There we go. And that's probably about a half a teaspoon of onion powder. If you, like I said, if you want to add in actual onions, you can do that. I would add that and maybe saute them first and then add the mushrooms if you want to add actual onions in it. I prefer not to do that, but that's okay. To each their own. This is all about making what works for you. And if you don't like garlic, you don't like onion, you don't add either, and you can do it straight with mushrooms, a little bit of seasoning of salt and pepper, and that's perfect. So we'll add a little bit of pepper here. Now you can use white pepper as well if you don't like black flakes in in your creamy sauce, you can use white pepper. I can't be bothered. It's all getting eaten anyhow. I think if I was serving it to, in a restaurant or something, then absolutely I'd use white pepper because it does have a more aesthetic appeal. Okay, so those are pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add in beef stock. You can use chicken stock, vegetable stock. You can probably use water if you want. This is probably 3/4 cup. So I'm going to add that in. That's one, going to give some flavor to, as it boils up a bit here. You can see here, we're going to scrape the bottom. I'm going to get all of those little bits off of it. So I'm going to work away at that. And that's, oh, it smells amazing. And I'm going to let this simmer for just a couple of minutes, maybe 2 minutes, 1 or 2 minutes, just to kind of get a little bit of the liquid to evaporate. We don't want it all gone, but I also want to make sure that we are letting all that stuff on the bottom loosen and that we're going to get that all up. And I also want to give it a chance to let the garlic just soften up a tiny bit. So I'm going to let that go for about a minute and I'll come right back to the next step. All right, so we can do one of two things here. One, we can add the cream sauce in now, but I don't want to do that quite yet. You have two options to do. If you had really thin pork chops or like just a pork cutlet you were doing this with, you could do the cream sauce in this, like sort of the heavy cream, I should say, in this now, and then just add your pork chops in. But because these aren't completely cooked, what I want to do is just add these pork chops back in with the mushrooms. I'm going to just clear a little bit of space, put the mushrooms on the side. So it's here, put that in there. And I'm going to just turn this down a little bit. I'm going to put a lid on it, put all those juices in there because you don't want to lose any of that. That's all flavor. Scrape all that off. I'm going to put a lid on this, and I'm going to let it simmer for about 5 or 6 minutes. And now I'm going to check the internal temperature of the pork chops. If you want them at 160 minimum, 160 to 170, whatever you're comfortable with. 160 will give you nice, it will be cooked. It will be a nice, perfectly cooked moist pork chop. Even that you're doing this in a sauce, pork chop can still turn dry. That's part of the reason why I use this specific type of chop, but you can use any chop you want. You can use a loin chop if you like. You can use pork tenderloin, chicken. I suppose you could try beef. I've never done it with beef, but you could do that as well. So I'm going to put the lid on this. We're going to let it simmer for, yeah, maybe about 5 minutes, I think. And then after 5 minutes, I'm going to check that temperature. So I'll let that go, and we will come back in a short bit. So just so you know, the reason for the lid is I want to keep the moisture in, and that way we don't lose all of that juice and all of the broth that we've added, and that's going to be, all that juice and that is going to be part of our sauce. So that's why we want to keep that lid on. Great, so this has been going for about 4 or 5 minutes. I'm just going to take the lid off, and as you can see, all that juice is still there, so that's a good sign. Now, if for some reason you've had your burner a little too high and all that juice is almost gone, just add some water. It's going to pick up all the flavors again. So I'm just going to look to see if I can find the thickest part of my chop. Let's see here, probably this one. Man, it looks like the thickest piece is here. So I'm going to turn on this, and I want for myself, let's see here, try to squeeze right into the center. Right in the center of the pork chop. Don't do it too close to the bone. This is 165. This is ready to go. So that looks good. And we'll just double check this one just to be safe. Get it right dead center of the meat. There we go. Well, that says 197. So this is definitely cooked. It's also a little bit close to the bone. So now, to get this sauce finished, I'm going to remove these chops again. Sorry, hit the camera there. So let's move it a little bit. All right, I want to scrape those mushrooms off. Perfect. So I'm going to put this down. I'm going to grab my cream. So this is, oops, I'm dribbling here, 1/2 cup of whipping cream. Just going to pour that in. Give it a good shake. I don't want to lose any of that. I'm going to rinse my hand here as well. So I pour it all over my hand. There we go. Off. So we've got the sauce in here now. So you can see this doesn't look exactly like, you know, mushroom soup, but you get the idea, I think. So I'm going to turn this up a little bit. I do want to reduce this down a little bit. I don't want to reduce it down too much, but I also want to get this liquid to, this liquid here, I want to get that thickened up. While I'm at it, I can scrape all the good bits off the sides of the pan. Still a few little pieces here. And even taking the mushrooms and rubbing them up against the side of the pan actually kind of helps with that. So we're going to get that going. Let that simmer for a few minutes. I guess I might get that turned up a little bit and turn that cold, the cool whipping cream in there. Of course, reduces it down or cools it down a bit, so that will take a moment or two. I'm going to get a spoon. I do want to get an idea on the flavor of the sauce. And as this boils down and thickens up, it's also going to condense the flavors a bit. So if it doesn't taste too salty now, that salt might come out just a little bit more. So let's try this. Salt is perfect for my taste. I'm gonna add a little more pepper to it because I really like the pepper. All these bubbles here are basically releasing the water out of from the cream, a little bit from the stock, and that's just thickening up. So what we're doing is reducing. Let me add some more pepper. Like I said, add as little or as much pepper as you want. If you want it more creamy, you can add more whipping cream. There's nothing against that. That is completely up to you on what level you want to, how creamy you want to do it. I'm trying not to go too crazy, although this is still pretty decadent. You can see here already that's thickening up a little bit. We'll let that go for a few more minutes, and I'll show you the consistency that I like. This is perfect too, but I do like to reduce it down just a little bit more. Let's see here. The other thing I like to do as well, when I'm ready to serve it, I like to sprinkle in some Parmesan cheese, and that kind of just makes it a little more decadent. It thickens it up a bit more. It's really almost an umami flavor, which is really delicious. And sides. So if you want to make some sides for this, it would be really great with rice. Pour some of the sauce over the rice would be amazing. If you do low carb, which I'm doing right now, you could do cauliflower rice, or just regular mashed cauliflower would be really good. My husband wanted a baked potato, so that's what he's getting tonight with it. And I'm going to do a side of pan-fried spinach. So I'm going to show you how I do that, because that's our veggie tonight. So I'm having that with my chop and vegetables, and my husband will have the chop with the sauce, and he'll have some spinach as well, along with his baked potato. So just going to give him a spoon here so I can dip the same one in. I'm going to show you what we're looking for. So this is getting a little bit thicker here, and if I run my finger or just that, it doesn't run into each other. You can see there's a bit of a, there, it doesn't really run into each other. Flavor-wise, perfect. So I'm going to turn this right down to low. I'm going to put these chops back in. I want to coat them on both sides just to make sure we get all that flavor. I'm going to let it get to the bottom of the pan, pull the mushrooms aside. Again, same thing with this chop. Coat both sides. Keep that like so. Just get some of those mushrooms on top and around. I'm going to pour in that juice. Now I'm going to keep this on low for a short bit to keep it warm. I am going to set it aside on another burner, and I'm going to show you how I do my spinach. Really basic, super yummy. Yeah, so let me get this onto another burner on low, and I'm going to be right back to show you the spinach and what we do. So I decided just to leave the since the chops are basically cooked already, they cooked a little quicker than I thought they were going to. I decided I'm just going to leave them simmering on the burner. I am just keeping the oven on because I'm finishing the potato for my husband. I'm going to actually turn that up to 400. So spinach, super simple. I like bacon fat with spinach. If you don't like bacon fat, it just gives it a little bit more, I don't know, a little yummy flavor. Spinach tends to have a little bit of a bitterness to it, which I don't mind, but it is nice with some bacon fat. So we're going to do medium heat. We're going to put some bacon fat in there. You can use butter, olive oil. You can do a mixture of both, margarine, whatever you want, some sort of fat, lard, beef tallow, whatever suits your fancy. So as long as you have some sort of thing in there. I've put in maybe a little over half a tablespoon, so that's all we really need there. And we're going to let that melt down. And basically 3 ingredients: some sort of fat, spinach. I use baby spinach, and I'm going to use this whole bag, which is going to cook down to almost nothing. Some salt and pepper. I also add in a little bit of garlic powder and onion powder because I like the flavor of it. But put in whatever you like. If you like a little bit of spice, you can do some pepper flakes. That's also nice. But I like to keep it pretty simple. Like I said, the flavor that I get mostly is probably just from the salt, the seasonings, and from the bacon fat. So I'm just going to put this around the pan here. I do hope you try this. This is a super simple recipe. I guess I do whatever sides you want. Rice is definitely a lovely one to put it on because that cream sauce is just amazing. It just sops up, the rice just sops up all that sauce. Makes for a really savory treat. Okay, so that's melted. It doesn't have to be sizzling. I just got it on about a medium heat here. And I'm gonna add in, oh sorry, that's my burner there telling me it's up to 400. So I'm just gonna add in, this pre-washed, so I'm not washing it. You can if you want to, but I'm not overly concerned. So spinach, oh, there's a yucky piece. Spinach, as we know, wilts down really quickly. So I'm gonna add in, I know I look like I'm overloading the pan, that's okay. That is actually gonna cook right down in no time at all. I do have more here, which I'm gonna add in, but I'm just gonna grab another lid. And we're gonna put it on top just to get that melted down a little bit. All right, so we're gonna put that on top. Get all these little pieces in here. I'm gonna set that on top for a moment and let it wilt for 1 minute. All right, that's been about 30 seconds, and actually here it wilting down already. I'm just gonna use the same, I'll rinse these tongs off, but use the same tongs. Use fresh ones if you want. I'm just using the same tongs I used for the chops. You can already see that that's wilting a little bit on the bottom. So I'm just gonna flip some of this over. You can see here is the turnover, some that are getting there. Now, if you like, you know, more flavor, more oil, you can add a little bit more in. There's a lot of water content. That's why this tends to melt down. Yeah, you can see this here is already wilting. There's a lot of water content, so that's why I don't add too much fat, but like I said, the bacon fat just gives it a little bit of flavor. So we're going to sprinkle that in. Now I like to do things in layers, so I'm going to add in a bunch of onion powder, sprinkle a little onion powder. Also do a sprinkle of garlic powder. You could add fresh garlic in here too if you want. Powder is just easier for me that we don't get pieces in it, and it just gives a little nice flavor over the top. A little bit of spinach, or sorry, a little bit of salt on the spinach, I should say. A little bit of pepper. There we go, not too much, just however much you like. And I'm going to add on the last of the spinach in the bag, and we're going to get that wilted down as well. Oops, lost a piece of that. There we go. And I'm just going to go a little bit on the top again to make sure everything's layered nicely. A little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt. There we go. French onion powder, just enough to get a little bit of flavor there. And then we've got a little bit of garlic powder. There we go. So that's my seasonings. I'm going to put the lid back on here. And just let that sit for another 30 seconds and we'll flip it around again. Just going to show you what our chops are doing right now. Well, that, yeah, they're boiling out still a little bit. We've still got lots of liquid there, so I'm going to turn this down a little bit lower even. I'm just going to use the same tongs because we're all eating the same dinner tonight, so I'm not overly worried. We'll flip the chops a little bit. I know they don't look as brown on that side, but honestly, that doesn't really matter. They're cooked. But if you want a little bit more color on them, just brown them up a little bit more than I did. But it all works out the same. So put the lid back on here. We're going to rinse these. There we go. And let's see what that spinach is doing. That's wilting really beautifully right now. So I just like to turn it and just kind of flip it right upside down. You can just stir and let it wilt on its own. This way, I think everything just gets mixed nicely. A little bit of flavor, that bacon fat in there. There we go. If you don't like spinach, do whatever vegetable you want on the side. I like spinach. It's a good pop of iron. I like the flavor of it. And honestly, greens are probably one of the lowest carb veggies, so this doesn't have very many carbs in it if you are trying to live a lower carb lifestyle. We're just, you know, just trying to be a little bit healthier. So there we go. So let that go for a few more minutes. There we go. Look at that. That looks amazing. So I'm going to cook it for a few more minutes because I do want to have these stems cooked down just a little bit because they tend to be a little bit tough. Otherwise, I don't want to pick them off. So we just want to soften them a bit. So what I'm going to actually do, so I'm going to take a tiny bit of water from my kettle, literally maybe 2 tablespoons. Put the lid back on. I'm going to let that steam for just a minute, and it's pretty much ready to serve. So when I'm done here, what I'll do is I will plate up and show you what everything looks like when it's all done and let you know how it all tastes. I'll let that steam for a moment and come right back. Okay, so I got that about where I want it. I'm just going to give it one more turn over. You can see there's a little bit of moisture in the bottom of the pan. That's okay because we don't want this dry. I'm just going to pull out a piece here, get a little bit of taste of flavor. Roll on that. It definitely needs more salt, so I'm going to add that in as well. Maybe a little bit more pepper. This actually would be nice with a little bit of butter in it, so I'm going to add a tiny bit of, maybe a half a teaspoon of butter in there, just to finish it off. And that should be an amazing flavor. That'll just finish it lovely. Got a teaspoon there. We're going to let that melt in. Kind of rubbed all over the top. There we go. Got salt mixed in, got butter mixed in. This is going to be lovely. There we go. So I'm going to turn this right down to low, just to keep it going here hot. There we go. Let's try another little piece. That's perfect. Yum yum. It's going to keep that on low, cover it up. We'll get ready to serve the pork chops shortly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this just a slight bit more decadent. I don't do this every time, but I do it a lot. I add in, actually I'm going to take those pork chops out, put them on a plate for just a moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the sauce in, or sorry, add the Parmesan cheese in, just to get the sauce thickened up just a touch more. And then I'll serve my plate and show you what everything looks like. Just set that aside for a quick moment. I've shredded up about a third of a cup, maybe even a half a cup. Probably a third of a cup of Parmesan Reggiano. Use whatever you have. Parmesan, Romano, some hard white cheese that has some flavor. Mozzarella you don't really want to do because you don't want this to be stringy. You just want this to be, just to have a little bit of creaminess and creamy flavor here. So I'm going to turn this up just a tiny bit. So I do want to thicken that back up a bit. I think with the lid on it, keeping it warm, it's thinned out a little bit again. So we'll just top that up. I'm just going to readjust the camera so you can see, sorry, a little bit better there. So yeah, let me just zoom in a little bit. There you go. You just want to get this bubbling again to cook off a little bit of the water that probably came out from the mushrooms. We'll add the chops back in, just cover them out, cook them up, and I'll get a plate served up. I really do hope you try this this recipe. I will show you a picture of the plate when I'm completely done before I eat it up. And I hope you've enjoyed this lazy weeknight meal. This is a quick take on canned mushroom soup pork chops. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Be sure to hit the little bell to get notifications whenever I put a new video up. And yeah, click a like button because that definitely helps my channel. And let me know what you want to hear. Is there any other meals you'd like to see me make that I haven't posted on my channel before? Or something that's your favorite, a dessert, something keto, something non-keto, whatever you like. You just let me know and I'd be happy to help you out. So have a great day. Thanks for joining us again, and we will see you soon. There is pork chop with creamy mushroom sauce and some nice, lovely spinach. I hope you try this and enjoy.